The Washington Examiner has released the transcript of a call with Kellyanne Conway, in which Kellyanne Conway blasts a reporter for dragging her husband into a story about Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne Conway is being considered for White House Chief of Staff. And it is a big deal that her husband is one of the leading critics against the President of the United States. I mean, George Conway is using his clout on social media to destroy the president as best he can. And Kellyanne was livid with the reporter and tore into her and thought it was off the record. And the reporter at one point says, "Do you want to go on the record with this?" And Kellyanne declines, which suggests she really did think it was off the record, and that the reporter conveyed it as such. But the rules in Washington are fairly clear these days. Presume that everything off the record is on the record, and unless they specifically tell you that you're going to be off the record, presume that you're on the record. And I've had these weird phone calls with some reporters in the past where you're on the record, off the record, on the record, off the record, off the record, off the record, on the record, off the record. And the reporters have to their credit, called me back later and said, "I just want to be clear, was this on or off the record?" And we've talked. But the presumption these days has to be, with such a hostile media environment around you, that everything is on the record. Even the stuff that's off the record is going to leak out probably, so you got to be careful. Kellyanne was understandably enraged, though, and she attacked the reporter. And I got to say, I know Kellyanne. I don't really know George well. I've known Kellyanne Conway for a very long time. In fact, I took my son up to D.C. in July, and we hung out with Kellyanne in the vice president's office for a while. She's just a super person. I genuinely like Kellyanne Conway and have for years liked Kellyanne Conway. Marriage is hard. Marriage is a hard thing. And it's really appalling to see two people joined by God under such an assault from all sides. There are conservatives out there who think Kellyanne needs to throw her husband under the bus, and there are progressives out there who think George needs to throw his wife under the bus. There are tweets that George utters where people, he's talking about his wife today. The media reports breathlessly on the goings-on. It can't be easy. It cannot be easy. And instead of cheering on the difficulties in a marriage, and particularly over politics and job, people should instead be praying for them and for the success and health of their marriage and for their children. It's no easy thing for a family to go through this. And I've been through the whirlwind with my family. We had people show up on our doorstep to threaten us in 2016. And that was no easy thing. It was no easy thing for me when my family wanted to know why I was on the radio, and the things that I was saying was getting our family harassed. My kids, I really wasn't going to go here. My kids were really, really bullied in 2016 at their private Christian school. We thought putting them in a private Christian school would make them safe and would keep the world at bay, so to speak. And it didn't. It was really bad for my kids in 2016. And for those of you who don't know, I didn't support the president in 2016, and I didn't because I really take my faith seriously and sometimes not seriously enough, and I'm trying. And I was really appalled in 2016 with the president's behavior and with Hillary Clinton's behavior. And I just said, I'm a political guy. I've never not voted. I'll vote third party, but I can't vote for Hillary Clinton. She's awful, but I can't vote for him either. I didn't think he was better than her. And he's proven me wrong in a lot of fronts, and that's why I told him. And I did tell him himself that I would vote for him in 2020. And he's wound up giving way more conservative policy and been a better pro-life president than I ever expected. But 2016 was bad. And my kids, I finally decided the thing that really drove me to be upfront with where I was leaning in 2020 was my daughter came into my office one day. It's been, I don't know when I said I would vote for the president. In February of this year, I guess, I wrote it. And I think it was sometime in January. There was the government shutdown stuff and all the fighting and everything. And my 14-year-old came in and she said, "Are we going to have to move schools again?" And I asked her what she meant. And she said, "Well, are we going to have people show up at the house to threaten us again, or are we going to have to move schools because of you and the president?" And I said no, I would take care of it. And that was when I decided I needed to. I was already given the Gorsuch fight, then the Kavanaugh fight, really. The Kavanaugh fight is what really pushed me further there. And then the president did fight for the tax cuts and all that. I just decided, let me go on and take this off the table. It'll get me blown up by other people, but it'll let my kids sleep well at night to go on and get this out there. And politics is hard these days. And it was hard in 2016. My wife, in large part, sheltered me from what was going on because she agreed with my position. She agreed that someone needed to be out there and say what a lot of other people might be thinking, but weren't in a position to say. And a lot of people who even supported the president were thinking privately about his character and the flaws there, but didn't feel like they could say it. Someone needed to say it. And she's got cancer and she's going to church in 2016, and a woman in church tells her she's never gotten right with going to church since. The kids were going to school, and kids were coming up to them and who had been their friends and would no longer be their friends. Instead, it was because of me. Other kids in school would come up to them and say that their parents thought I was going to get shot or wished I got shot, or the kids themselves wished I would get shot. They were coming home and crying in the car on the way home. They had a 10-minute ride home, and their mother was taking them to get treats to calm down and dry their eyes before they got home, so I would never see. I had no idea this stuff was going on. I didn't know this was going on. My first clue to it was we were in a store, and a man saw me and my kids and approached, and I'm used to people doing this now. People know who I am. I'm on TV. I'm on radio. I was on city council in Macon. We live in Macon, and so I'm a recognized figure, and I just assumed the person was going to come up, and he pivoted towards my kids. And I knew something was wrong, and he began yelling at my kids. That their father was destroying the country, that he was supporting Hillary, which I wasn't doing. People just came unhinged. They were mad at me because they felt betrayed, because they thought I was one of them, and shared their worldview. And by and large, I did share their worldview, but I interpreted through the lens of our worldview things differently. And they were really mad at me, and I got it. I never filed police charges on the 3 guys who showed up at our house. And a lot of people, frankly, didn't want to believe the story because I didn't file police charges. But I knew they were pissed off. They showed up to threaten my family, and I was concerned that they took the time to find where I lived and to show up on my front porch and to threaten my family. And it wasn't a physical violence threat. It was the threat of, we're going to ruin you. We're going to drive you from the radio. We're going to drive you from TV. We're going to put you out of business. That sort of threat. It wasn't a threat of violence. They were just pissed off, and I get that. And I understand people are angry now. I understand that people are really, really angry. In fact, in the next hour, I want to get into this. There's polling out for the Battleground poll, a highly respected poll, that 2/3 of the country thinks we're on the verge of a civil war. And I get it from the anger of people. But man, y'all, earlier this year when my daughter came in, and it was probably 10 o'clock at night. I think it was at night. And I was sitting I'm sitting in the chair I'm sitting in right now. And she comes in and she just wants to know, are we going to have to move schools again? Are we going to have people show back up? Are we going to have security at our house? We had security in 2016 for several months. And there was just no way. My heart broke. I was responsible for that in 2016. I took what I thought was a principled stand, and it was causing my kids to be with it. My kids are now at a different school, at a smaller Christian school than the one we were at. The one we were at had become very, very worldly. They're now at a Christian school where, good Lord, they've got to learn the catechism. When instead of learning a memory verse, they got to learn a memory chapter of the Bible, a memory psalm of the Bible. It's intensive Christian education. But politics invades there too. And she was worried about, she's in a good spot now. She's made new friends. She's 14. She's got a stable group of friends. She likes her school. She's doing well in math, and she didn't want to move. She didn't want security at the house. She didn't want people showing up and threatening us or harassing them at the grocery store. You know, my kids don't like to go in public with me anymore. We were at Lenox Mall in Atlanta, and a lady who's a supporter, the lady who is a supporter saw me and started screaming my name and charged towards us. And this is after all the security stuff. And my youngest actually thought we were going to be hurt. He thought we were about to be attacked, because all he knew was that when people approached me, it was to either yell at them or threaten us. And to this day, he won't go back to Linux. This is now 2 years ago. This was 2017. And he won't go to the mall with me. Doesn't like to. He's not comfortable doing it. That's what we went through. And so, yeah, I'm happy to make sure people understand where I'm standing publicly with the president right now. And who knows? I mean, honestly, if the evidence is overwhelming that the president did try to use his power to get a foreign country to investigate Joe Biden to hurt him in 2020, then, yeah, I think I would have to support impeachment. And who knows? Just started the show. It'll burn all down to the ground, have my kids threatened again. But I think principle matters, and I don't think there are enough people with principle these days. I think principle matters, and you got to take a stand. And sometimes it's an unpopular stand, but you got to do what you think is the right thing. And I think the right thing is to not stand for a politician, but stand for the Constitution and stand for principles and try to stand for truth and find truth if you can. But until that comes and until that day, then, I mean, given what's going on with the left these days, the insanity of the left, you're damn right I'll support the president. I'll hold my nose if I have to, but if it's him or them, listen, I went third party in 2016, and the president still got elected. People told me Hillary would get elected if I didn't support him. I didn't. He got elected. He proved me wrong in many aspects, proved me right in a lot of aspects. I still think Republicans are about to be annihilated at the polls, looking at the polling. I think a short-term victory, long-term disaster for the GOP right now if the president can't change his ways to some degree. But I'll stand with him against the people who want to shut down my churches and take my guns. Elizabeth Warren is out there right now saying that. I've got that audio. I'll play it. It's a very convoluted path to go from where I went to there, but I'll bring it full circle. And again, I didn't intend to talk about this, but seeing the people cheer on a fight that they perceive as happening between Kellyanne Conway and her husband. These are two people who fundamentally disagree about the president, and they're joined by God in marriage. And it's an awful thing to see people out there cheering on that division, cheering on anything they perceive as passive aggressiveness between husband and wife. They've got kids. I can assure you, my wife protected me from everything we were going through in 2016. And my kids were going through it. And I just didn't know. I can assure you that Kellyanne and George's kids are going through it. People get so interested in the soap opera politics, they forget there are real human beings involved. There are real people. There's a real family. And regardless of whether the call between Kellyanne Conway and the reporter was supposed to be off the record or not, she presumed that it was. It's very clear she presumed that it was. But turning this into a soap opera story of George versus Kellyanne and all, I think it's offensive to me, because it shows we are willing to soap operize these families and politicize these families, and not recognize that in a day and age where everybody is divided on politics, and my kids get yelled at in a grocery store and people show up at our home to threaten us because they disagree. Here's a husband and wife who very clearly disagree on politics these days. And they're sticking it out, and we should be saying more of that, please. People who disagree on things should be able to have relationships and encourage each other and encounter each other and live with each other and live through each other. And instead, everybody wants the partisan tribalism these days of, oh, my gosh, he hates the president, she likes the president. Why are they together? We should be cheering on the breaking up. No, you shouldn't. You should be saying more of that. I kind of look at some of it. I cringe myself sometimes. And I just think, George, your wife works for the president. Or when I see the president going after George Conway, I think, yeah, his wife works for you, dude. But we should be encouraging people to stay together in marriage instead of the convenient breakups of marriage that we're seeing so often these days. CBS News has a big story out on consensual non-monogamy, and it's the wave of the future for marriage. No, it's not. It's a woman in love with a man who wants to sleep around on her, so she's pretending to be okay with it. People don't value marriage. We should at least be thankful that George and Kellyanne appear to, are struggling on hard times undoubtedly, but the rest of the world piling on their marriage and them, I think, is uncalled for. And having lived in the whirlwind, I understand it to some degree, and I wish more people did, and wish more people had them in their prayers, hoping that they can get through this together as a family as opposed to cheering on the soap opera-like aspect of it.
National Connections, Local Focus. Eric Erickson is live every weekday.